Corinne Holloway leveled the rifle at the stranger's chest and felt her heart stop when she recognized his face. 8 years. 8 years since Cole Crawford rode out of Black Hollow without a word, leaving her standing in a half-packed wagon with a wedding dress she never wore. 8 years since she turned grief into something useful and built her family's failing orchard into the town's largest produce supplier. And now he stood in her rows, dusty and road-worn, looking at her like she was water in a desert. She kept the rifle steady. "Don't you take another step." Cole's hands stayed visible at his sides, palms out. His voice came rough and low. "Corinne, I know how this looks. You don't know a damn thing." Her finger brushed the trigger guard. "The land office said a syndicate man was coming to survey my property. Guess they sent someone who already knows the layout." He flinched like she'd struck him. "I'm not with them. I came back to stop them." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "You came back after 8 years of silence, the week before the territorial judge rules on the Black Hollow land dispute. And you expect me to believe that's coincidence?" Cole took a careful step forward. The rifle snapped up, and he froze. "Corinne, please, just listen." "I listened once." She swallowed the burn in her throat. "I waited 3 months for a letter. I wore that dress until the moths got it. I learned to prune and graft and negotiate freight contracts because I had nothing else to do with the future I'd planned. So no, Cole, I won't listen. I'll give you 10 seconds to get off my land before I assume you're trespassing for the syndicate and act accordingly." His jaw tightened. The sorrow in his eyes shifted to something harder. "You're in danger. Real danger. The syndicate's not just trying to buy you out. They're planning to force every holdout off their land by the end of the month. I rode 600 miles because I found out, and I knew you'd be the first one they'd come for." She held his gaze, searching for the lie. "Why would you care?" "Because I never stopped." His voice cracked on the last word. "Because I made the worst mistake of my life when I left. And I've spent 8 years trying to become someone who could come back and face you. I know I don't deserve a second of your time. But Black Hollow needs help, and I can give it. After that, I'll ride out, and you'll never see me again. I swear it." The sound of riders cut through the orchard. Corinne's pulse spiked. She lowered the rifle a fraction and glanced toward the road. Dust rose beyond the fence line. Cole's expression went cold and alert, the kind of stillness she remembered from before the war, when he'd been the fastest draw in 2 counties. "That's them," he said quietly. "They're early." She looked back at him. "How do you know?" "Because they hired me first. When I figured out what they were really planning, I turned them down. They didn't take it well." The riders crested the low rise. 4 men in dark coats, moving fast. Corinne's stomach dropped. She recognized the led horse. Her brother-in-law, Daniel, who'd been courting her since her sister died 2 years ago. Daniel, who worked for the Territorial Land Office. Daniel, who'd been asking pointed questions about her finances for months. She lowered the rifle completely and met Cole's eyes. "If you're lying to me, I'll finish what I just started." "Understood." She turned toward the barn. "Then get inside and stay out of sight. I'll handle this." "Corinne." His voice stopped her. She looked back. He was already moving toward the trees, but his gaze held hers for a beat longer. I'm sorry. For all of it. She didn't answer. There wasn't time. The riders were too close. Corinne walked to the edge of the orchard and set the rifle against a fence post within easy reach. She stripped off her gloves and waited, arms crossed. Daniel reined in hard, his horse snorting and sidestepping. The other 3 men fanned out behind him. All strangers, all watching her with the flat appraisal of men used to getting their way. Daniel swung down, smiling. That smile had always been too careful. Corinne, didn't expect to find you out here alone. I'm always out here alone. She kept her voice level. It's my orchard. Not for much longer, one of the strangers said. He was older, gray-haired, with a banker's coat and a gun belt that didn't match. The judge's decision comes down Monday. Once the county declares eminent domain, you'll have 72 hours to vacate. The county hasn't declared anything. Corinne looked at Daniel. Has it? Daniel's smile thinned. There's been some preliminary discussion. For the good of the territory, Black Hollow's water rights are too valuable to leave in private hands. The railroad's coming through, Corinne. Progress doesn't wait. Progress, she said slowly, or profit? The gray-haired man stepped forward. Miss Holloway, we're prepared to offer you fair market value. $300 for the orchard, house, and water access. That's more than generous. Her land was worth 10 times that, and they knew it. She let the silence stretch, then shook her head. Not interested. This isn't a negotiation. The man's voice went cold. You'll take the offer, or you'll take nothing when the county seizes it. Then I guess I'll see you in court. She picked up the rifle and turned toward the barn. The click of a cocking hammer stopped her cold. She turned slowly. One of the riders had drawn, his pistol aimed lazily in her direction. Daniel's face had gone pale. He raised a hand. Put that away. That's not how we're doing this. The gunman ignored him. The gray-haired man stepped closer. Let me be clear, Miss Holloway. You have 2 choices. Sign the deed over tonight, or suffer an unfortunate accident. Orchards burn. Wells collapse. Women living alone face all sorts of dangers. Cold rage flooded her chest. She raised the rifle, smooth and fast. Get off my land. The gunman's pistol swung toward her fully. Daniel shouted something. And then Cole stepped out of the barn with a rifle of his own, the muzzle trained on the gray-haired man's spine. Drop it, Cole said quietly. Or I drop you. Every man froze. The gunman's eyes flicked sideways, calculating. Cole worked the lever. The metallic snapped loud in the sudden stillness. I said drop it. You've got 3 seconds. The pistol hit the dirt. Cole moved forward, his rifle never wavering. Corinne felt something crack open in her chest. A wall she'd built 8 years ago suddenly full of fissures. Cole's gaze swept the riders, cold and unreadable. Corinne, check his coat. She crossed to the gray-haired man and pulled a folded paper from his inside pocket. It was a deed transfer form, pre-signed by a county clerk, with her name and property description already filled in. All it needed was her signature. Or a forgery. She held it up. Daniel's face went white. He shook his head. I didn't know about that. Corinne, I swear, I thought this was a legitimate buyout. Cole's voice cut through. Ride back to town. Tell whoever sent you that Black Hollow's not rolling over. And if anyone comes back here without a court order and a marshal, they'll leave in a wagon. Understood? The gray-haired man's jaw worked. He nodded once, tight and furious. The riders turned their horses. Daniel lingered, looking at Corinne with something close to desperation. I didn't know, he said again. I'll fix this. She didn't answer. He rode after the others, dust rising in their wake. Corinne folded the deed slowly and tucked it into her pocket. Her hands were shaking. She looked at Cole. He lowered the rifle, his expression still hard. But his eyes found hers, and something in them gentled. You could have stayed hidden, she said. No. His voice was rough. I couldn't. The admission hung between them, too large and complicated to touch. Corinne swallowed and looked away. Thank you. Corinne. She made herself meet his eyes. I meant what I said. I came back to help. Not just you. The whole town. But I'll leave the second you tell me to. She wanted to tell him to go. Wanted to rebuild the wall and lock him out before he could leave again. But her land was in danger. Her town was in danger. And Cole Crawford, whatever else he was, had just put himself between her and a loaded gun. Stay tonight, she said finally. We'll talk strategy in the morning. After that, we'll see. Relief flickered across his face, brief and unguarded. All right. She turned toward the house, then stopped. Cole, why did you leave? His face closed down. That's a long answer. Then you've got all night to figure out how to make it short. She walked away before he could respond, her heart pounding so hard she thought he might hear it. The house felt too small with Cole in it. Corinne set coffee on the stove and tried not to watch him move through the front room, his shoulders filling the space in a way that made her ache. He stopped at the mantel, looking at the photograph there. Her parents on their wedding day, her mother's face, so much like Corinne's own, serious and hopeful. Your folks, he said quietly. I heard about your father. I'm sorry. 2 years ago. Heart gave out during harvest. She poured coffee into 2 tin cups. Her hands steadier now. My sister went 6 months later. Fever. I didn't know about Clara. His voice roughened. God, Corinne. She handed him a cup and sat at the table. He took the chair across from her, careful, like he didn't want to assume too much space. The lamp between them threw shadows across his face. He looked older, harder. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, and the scar at his temple was new. You were going to tell me why you left, she said. He stared into his coffee. After we set the date, my cousin came through town. He told me my brother had died. Cholera, down in Texas. He also told me my mother was sick. Same thing. She had maybe a month. Corinne's chest tightened. You never said you had family in Texas. I didn't talk about them. We'd been estranged since I left for the war. My father disowned me when I wouldn't come back to work the family ranch. He drank into the cup. Not drinking. When I heard my mother was dying, I thought I could ride down, see her one last time, and get back before the wedding. I thought I had time. What happened? She was already gone when I got there. My father wouldn't let me in the house. Said I'd made my choice, and I wasn't welcome. I stayed in town for the funeral. He had me arrested for trespassing when I tried to visit her grave. Corinne's throat closed. Cole, I spent 2 months in a Texas jail. By the time I got out, I'd missed the wedding by 6 weeks. I didn't have money for a telegram. Didn't have money for anything. I worked my way north, but every time I got close to Black Hollow, I'd think about what I'd done to you. How you must hate me. I couldn't face it. So I kept moving. She forced herself to breathe. You could have written. I tried. He looked up, and the pain in his eyes was raw. I wrote you 20 letters. I never sent them. Every one sounded like an excuse. You deserved better than excuses. You deserved the truth. Her voice cracked. I thought you'd changed your mind. I thought I wasn't enough. God, no. He reached across the table, then stopped, his hand hovering near hers. Corinne, leaving you was the worst thing I ever did. Not coming back was the second worst. I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know that every day I was gone, I thought about you. Every single day. The air between them felt too thin. Corinne pulled her hand back and stood, crossing to the window. She could see the orchard in the moonlight, rows of trees she'd planted and pruned and fought for. You've been back in the territory for how long? 3 weeks. And you just now came to Black Hollow. I had to make sure I could actually help before I showed my face. I worked for the syndicate for 10 days, long enough to learn their plan. Then I quit, stole their files, and rode here. He stood, moving to the other side of the room, giving her space. They're trying to take every property between here and the rail line. 16 families. Yours is the keystone. You control the only year-round water source for 10 miles. If they get you, the others fall like dominoes. How do we stop them? Prove the land seizure is fraudulent. The county clerk they're using is corrupt. If we can get evidence before the judge rules Monday, we can blow the whole thing open. Where's the evidence? Locked in a safe in the land office. Cole's mouth twisted. Which is where your brother-in-law works. Daniel's not part of this. He looked sick out there. Maybe. Or maybe he's a better liar than you think. She turned on him, anger flaring. Don't do that. Don't come back after 8 years and tell me who to trust. I'm not telling you anything. I'm asking you to be careful. You've been on your own a long time, Corinne. I get that. But the syndicate doesn't play fair, and the people you think are friends might not be. And you are? The words came out sharper than she meant. You. Who left me standing in a wedding dress? You, who didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth 8 years ago. His face went pale. You're right. I didn't trust you. I didn't trust anyone. I thought I had to carry everything alone, because that's what my father taught me. It took me 8 years to figure out how wrong I was. He moved closer, his voice dropping. I'm not that man anymore, Corinne. But if you can't believe that, I understand. Just let me help you save your land. After that, I'm gone. She wanted to stay angry. Anger was safer than the other thing rising in her chest, the thing that felt too much like hope. She looked at him. Really looked. The boy she'd loved had been quick to smile, restless, full of plans. This man was quieter, steadier. There was grief in him, but also something solid, like he'd been tested and hadn't broken. How do we get into the land office? she asked finally. Cole's plan was either brilliant or insane. Corinne couldn't decide which. The county auction is Saturday, he said, spreading a hand-drawn map on her kitchen table. Every rancher and merchant in 50 miles will be there. The land office will be empty, except for maybe one clerk. We go in through the back, get the files, and get out. If anyone asks, you were at the auction the whole time, and I was never in town. And if we get caught, then we both go to jail, and the syndicate wins. She studied the map. Daniel has keys. If he really isn't involved, maybe he'd help. Too risky. If he's dirty, you tip our hand. If he's clean, you put him in danger. We do this alone. We do this alone. She looked up. When you say we, you mean you're coming with me. You think I'd let you break into the land office by yourself? I've been handling things by myself for 8 years. I know. His voice gentled. And you've done a hell of a job. But you don't have to do this alone. The words hit harder than they should have. She turned away, focusing on the map. What time? 3 o'clock. Auction runs until sunset. We'll have maybe 2 hours before anyone notices the files are gone. Fine. She folded the map. You can sleep in the barn. His mouth quirked. Almost a smile. Yes, ma'am. He picked up his coat and hat. At the door, he paused. Corinne, thank you for giving me a chance. She didn't answer. The door closed softly behind him. She stood alone in the kitchen, listening to his footsteps cross the yard, and wondered if she was making the second biggest mistake of her life. Morning came too fast. Corinne woke to pale light and the sound of someone working in the barn. She dressed quickly, pinning her hair tighter than usual, and walked out to find Cole mucking stalls. He'd stripped down to his shirt and vest, sleeves rolled back, moving with the easy rhythm of a man used to hard work. You didn't have to do that, she said. He looked up, a little sheepish. Couldn't sleep. Figured I'd make myself useful. She picked up a pitchfork and started on the next stall. They worked in silence for a while, the kind of comfortable quiet she hadn't felt in years. It scared her how easy it was to fall into rhythm with him, like 8 years had collapsed into nothing. Cole broke the silence first. Tell me about the orchard. How'd you turn it around? Graft work, mostly. I brought in hardier rootstock from Kansas, crossed it with my father's heirloom varieties. Took 3 years to see results, but now I've got apples that survive the late frosts and still taste good enough to sell at premium. She pitched hay into the trough. I also negotiated a contract with the fort. They buy half my harvest for their commissary. Smart. Necessary. She met his eyes. I didn't have a choice. It was grow the business or lose the land. You did more than survive. He leaned on his pitchfork. You built something. The approval in his voice made her chest tighten. She looked away. What about you? What have you been doing all these years? Drifting, mostly. I worked cattle drives, did some guiding, spent a winter trapping in Montana. Last year I hired on as a surveyor for a railroad company. That's how I met the syndicate. They wanted me to scout properties for acquisition. When I found out Black Hollow was on the list, I knew I had to come back. Even though you thought I'd hate you. Especially because I thought you'd hate me. set the pitchfork aside. Some things matter more than pride. She wanted to ask what he meant, but the question felt too dangerous. Instead, she nodded toward the house. I'll make breakfast. We've got a long day ahead. Saturday morning broke clear and hot. Corinne dressed in her best town clothes, a deep blue dress with a fitted jacket, and pinned her hat carefully. Cole waited by the wagon, clean-shaven and uncomfortable in a borrowed Sunday coat that almost fit. He handed her up to the seat and climbed beside her. The ride into Black Hollow took 40 minutes. Corinne spent it watching the road and trying not to notice how close Cole sat, how his arm brushed hers every time the wagon jolted. By the time they reached town, her nerves were wound tight. The auction yard was chaos. Ranchers crowded the pens, inspecting livestock. Merchants haggled over goods piled on tables. The auctioneer's voice rang out over the noise, calling bids. Corinne climbed down, and Cole caught her elbow, steadying her. His hand lingered a second longer than necessary. Stay visible, he said quietly. Talk to people. Make sure they remember seeing you. What about you? I'll circle around. Meet you at the livery at 5. He disappeared into the crowd before she could respond. Corinne took a breath and walked toward the pens, forcing herself to smile and nod at familiar faces. Daniel found her within minutes. He looked haggard, his collar loose, his eyes shadowed. Corinne, can we talk? She glanced around. The auction crowd milled between them and the land office, 2 blocks away. Not here. Please. He lowered his voice. I need to explain about yesterday. She let him guide her to the edge of the yard, near a water trough. He ran a hand through his hair. I didn't know they were going to threaten you. I swear. I thought this was a standard buyout. When I saw that deed form, I realized how deep this goes. And I want to help. I can get you access to the land office records. Prove the seizure's fraudulent. Corinne's pulse kicked. Why would you do that? Because it's the right thing. And because I care about you. His hand found hers. I know you've been keeping me at a distance. I understand why. But we're family, Corinne. Let me protect you. She pulled her hand back gently. I appreciate the offer. But I need to handle this my own way. His expression hardened. This is about him, isn't it? The drifter at your place yesterday. I asked around. Cole Crawford. Your old fiancé. He's back. And suddenly, you don't need anyone else. Danielle. He raised a hand. I'm sorry. That was out of line. But be careful, Corinne. Men like that don't come back without a reason. And it's usually not a good one. She watched him walk away, unease coiling in her stomach. Daniel's offer felt too convenient. But so did his jealousy. She shook her head and moved back into the crowd, making herself seen, nodding to the blacksmith, the store owner, the pastor's wife. All the while, her mind tracked the minutes. 3 o'clock. Cole would be moving now. The land office sat on a side street, brick and quiet. Cole approached from the alley, his hat pulled low. The back door was locked, but old. He had it open in 30 seconds. Inside, the office smelled like dust and ink. He moved fast, checking the front windows first. The street was empty. Everyone was at the auction. The safe sat in the corner, a small iron box with a combination lock. Cole pulled a folded paper from his pocket. Numbers he'd copied from the syndicate's files. The lock clicked open on the third try. Inside, files were stacked neatly. He pulled the black hollow folder and spread it on the desk. Deed transfers. Forged signatures. Letters between the syndicate and a man named Garrett, the county clerk. And a ledger showing payments. Bribes. Enough to bury them all. Cole's hands moved fast, copying the critical pages. He was halfway through when the front door rattled. Footsteps. 2 cents. Voices. Cole, I'm telling you, something's off about this whole deal. That was Daniel's voice. And I'm telling you to keep your mouth shut. Another man. Older. Authoritative. You work for the territory, not for some orchard keeper with a grudge. She's not making it up. I saw the deed form. That's fraud. The footsteps stopped just outside the office door. Cole slid the folder back into the safe and eased it shut. The lock wouldn't catch quietly. He left it open a crack and moved toward the back door. The front door opened. Daniel stepped through, then stopped cold. The man behind him, tall and silver-haired, followed. Both stared at Cole. What the hell are you doing here? Daniel's voice went sharp. Cole raised his hands. Just leaving. The silver-haired man's face went cold. That's the Crawford boy. The one who quit. He crossed the room fast. You broke in here. You're stealing county documents. No, sir. Just looking around. Silverhair pulled a pistol. Don't move. Daniel moved between them. Wait. Just wait. Let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Arrest him. Daniel's face went white. On what charge? Breaking and entering. Theft. Take your pick. Silverhair gestured with the pistol. Or we can say he tried to rob the county safe, and I shot him in self-defense. Either way, he's not walking out of here. Cole's mind raced. He could try for the gun, but Daniel was in the way. He could run, but he'd be shot in the back. Or he could talk. You're Garrett, he said. The county clerk. The one taking syndicate money to forge deed transfers. Garrett's eyes went flat. Prove it. I just did. Cole nodded toward the safe. You left the evidence right there. Daniel turned, staring at the safe. Garrett's gun swung toward him. Don't even think about it. You're dirty. Daniel's voice shook. You've been dirty this whole time, and you've been useful. Garrett's smile was thin. Now step aside. Daniel didn't move. I won't let you kill him. Then you're a fool. The gun steadied on Daniel's chest. The front window shattered. Glass exploded inward, and Garrett staggered, the pistol firing wild. Cole lunged, tackling him as a second shot punched through the wall. They hit the floor hard. Cole wrenched the gun free and rolled, coming up with the weapon trained on Garrett's head. Don't move. Corinne stood outside the window, her rifle still aimed, her face white but steady. Cole stared at her. How did you know? Daniel sent you in here. She glanced at Daniel, who'd flattened against the wall. I saw you two talking at the auction. When you both disappeared, I followed. Daniel shook his head, frantic. I didn't know he'd be here. I swear. But you did send Cole. Corinne's voice was ice. You told him the office would be empty. I thought it would be. I wanted to help by walking him into a trap. She lowered the rifle slowly. Get out, Daniel. Corinne, get out. Or I'll tell the marshal you were part of this. He stared at her, something like grief crossing his face, then bolted. His footsteps faded down the street. Corinne climbed through the window, glass crunching under her boots. Cole stood, still holding Garrett's pistol. Shouts rose from the direction of the auction yard. Someone had heard the shots. We need to go. Cole grabbed the files from the safe and shoved them inside his coat. Now, they ran for the back door. The alley was clear. Corinne led the way to the livery, where she'd left the wagon. Cole helped her up and took the reins, snapping them hard. The horses lurched into a run. Behind them, a crowd gathered at the land office. Voices shouted. Someone pointed. Cole drove the wagon out of town at a reckless pace, the wheels rattling over ruts. Corinne gripped the seat, her heart slamming. When they were a mile out, he finally slowed. He glanced at her, his face tight with adrenaline and something else. You saved my life. You're welcome. Why did you follow me? You were supposed to stay visible at the auction. I did. For 2 hours. Then I saw Daniel looking for you and I knew something was wrong. She met his eyes. I wasn't going to let him hurt you. The wagon rolled to a stop. Cole stared at her. The afternoon light caught in her hair, turning the loose strands gold. Her face was flushed, her eyes bright with fear and fury. She'd never looked more beautiful. Corinne. His voice came out rough. The words died when she leaned across the seat and kissed him. It was desperate and clumsy, and 8 years overdue. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. She tasted like dust and fear and something wild. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. I thought I'd lost you, he said. You did. Her voice shook. 8 years ago, you lost me. But I'm choosing to let you find me again. Don't make me regret it. I won't. I swear. She pulled back, her hand still resting on his chest. We should go. They'll come looking. He nodded and took up the reins again. The wagon rolled toward the orchard, the sun sinking behind them. Neither spoke, but his hand found hers on the seat between them, and she didn't pull away. They reached the orchard as twilight fell. Cole carried the files inside while Corinne lit lamps. He spread the papers on the kitchen table, and they went through them together. The evidence was damning. Forged signatures on a dozen deeds, letters between Garrett and a man named Thorne, the syndicate's regional agent. Payment records showing bribes to territorial officials. This is enough, Corinne said. We take it to the judge tomorrow. He'll have to dismiss the seizure case, if we can get to him before the syndicate does. Cole's expression was grim. Garrett will know we have the files by now. He'll warn Thorne. They'll try to stop us. Then we leave tonight. Ride to the territorial capital. Deliver the files directly to the judge. That's a 12-hour ride. And the road's not safe after dark. Safer than staying here. She met his eyes. They came to my land with guns once. They'll do it again. He nodded slowly. All right. We pack light and ride fast. If we leave now, we can reach the capital by midday tomorrow. They moved quickly, gathering supplies. Corinne changed into riding clothes and packed food. Cole saddled 2 horses. By the time they were ready, full dark had fallen. Corinne locked the house and took one last look at the orchard. The trees were silver shadows in the moonlight. "They'll still be here when you get back," Cole said quietly. "I know." She turned to him. "Let's go." They rode out at a steady lope, the night closing around them. The road was pale under the moon, winding through low hills and dry creek beds. Corinne's horse was a steady mare, sure-footed in the dark. Cole rode beside her, his rifle across his saddle, his eyes scanning the shadows. An hour out, Corinne broke the silence. "Tell me about the war." "You never talked about it before." He was quiet for a long moment. "There's not much to tell. I saw things no one should see. Did things I'm not proud of. When it was over, I didn't know how to come home. Didn't know how to be the man you'd agreed to marry. So you just didn't come home at all. I'm sorry." His voice was low. "I thought I was protecting you. I thought you'd be better off without me. That wasn't your choice to make. I know that now." He looked at her, his face shadowed. "I spent 8 years learning it. I'm done running, Corinne. Whatever happens, I'm staying. If you'll have me." Her throat tightened. "Ask me again when this is over. When we're not riding for our lives. Deal." They rode on. The night deepened. Stars wheeled overhead, cold and distant. Corinne's thoughts circled, chasing themselves. She'd kissed Cole Crawford. After 8 years of anger and grief and carefully built walls, she'd kissed him. And it had felt like coming home. She glanced at him. His profile was sharp against the sky, his shoulders easy in the saddle. He looked like he belonged here, riding through the dark with her, chasing justice. Maybe he always had. They stopped to water the horses at a creek near midnight. Corinne slid from the saddle, her legs stiff. Cole led the horses to the water and loosened their girths. Corinne sank onto a rock, watching the moon on the water. Cole sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "How much farther?" she asked. 6 hours, maybe. We'll reach the capital by dawn if we keep this pace." She nodded. They sat in silence. The creek murmured. Somewhere an owl called. Cole's hand found hers in the dark, his fingers threading through hers. "I've thought about this," he said quietly. "Coming back. Seeing you again. I ran through 100 different ways it might go. Most of them ended with you telling me to go to hell. I still might." He smiled, a flash of white in the shadows. "Fair enough. Why did you really come back, Cole?" "Not the land grab. The real reason." He was quiet for a long time. "Because I was tired of being afraid, tired of running. I wanted to find out if the woman I loved was still the woman I remembered. And if she was, I wanted to fight for her. Even if I didn't deserve a second chance." Her heart hurt. "And if I'd told you to leave, then I'd have left. But I'd have gone knowing I tried." She turned to look at him. In the moonlight, his eyes were dark and steady. She saw the boy she loved, and the man he'd become, and the space between them where 8 years of pain lived. It would always be there. But maybe it didn't have to define them. "I'm glad you came back," she said. "Yeah?" "Yeah." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. The kiss was softer this time, tender and full of things they couldn't say yet. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. We should keep moving. In a minute, they stayed there, hands linked, listening to the night. Finally, Cole stood and pulled her up. They tightened the girths and mounted. The road stretched ahead, pale and empty. They rode into it together. The sound of pursuit came an hour before dawn. Corinne heard it first, a distant thunder that didn't match the rhythm of their own horses. She twisted in the saddle. Dust rose behind them, backlit by the faint glow of approaching day. "Riders," Cole said flatly. "At least 4. How far?" "Close." He glanced at the terrain. "There's a rocky pass a mile ahead. We can make a stand there. Or we can outrun them. Not with the horses this tired." He urged his gelding into a canter. "Come on." They pushed the horses hard, racing for the pass. The sky lightened from black to gray. Behind them, the riders closed the gap. Corinne's mare stumbled, caught herself, kept running. The pass opened ahead, a narrow gap between 2 rock walls. They plunged through and pulled up hard. Cole swung down and dragged his rifle free. Corinne dismounted, her own rifle in hand. They took cover behind a tumble of boulders at the mouth of the pass. The riders thundered closer. 4 men. No, 5. Corinne's stomach dropped when she recognized the lead horse. Garrett. And behind him, 3 hired guns, and Daniel. "Hold fire until I say," Cole said quietly. The riders slowed as they entered the pass. Garrett raised a hand, and they stopped 30 yards out. He sat easy in the saddle, his face hard in the dim light. "Crawford." "Miss Holloway. Hand over the files, and we'll let you ride out." Cole's voice carried clear and cold. "Come and take them. Don't be stupid." Garrett gestured, and the gunmen spread out. "You're outnumbered, outgunned. This doesn't have to end badly." Corinne stepped into view, her rifle aimed at Garrett's chest. "You tried to steal my land, threaten my life, shot at us in the land office. It already ended badly." Daniel edged his horse forward. "Corinne, please, just give them what they want. I don't want to see you hurt." "Then you shouldn't have led them here." His face crumpled. "I didn't have a choice. Thorne said he'd ruin me if I didn't cooperate." "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this." She didn't lower the rifle. "Right away, Daniel. Right now. Before this gets worse." He hesitated. One of the gunmen pulled his pistol. The crack of the shot was shockingly loud. Rock exploded near Corinne's head. She flinched and returned fire. Her bullet took the gunman in the shoulder, and he toppled from his horse, screaming. The pass erupted. Gunfire echoed off the rocks. Cole fired twice, methodical and precise. Another gunman went down. Garrett wheeled his horse and retreated. Daniel froze in the middle of the chaos, his hands raised. A bullet snapped past his head, and he finally spurred forward, racing after Garrett. The remaining 2 gunmen tried to flank. Cole shifted position, firing from a new angle. One man's horse reared and threw him. He hit the ground hard and didn't move. The last gunman turned and ran. Silence fell, broken only by the echo of hoofbeats fading. Corinne lowered her rifle, her hands shaking. Cole crossed to her, his face tight. You hit? No. You? I'm fine. He glanced at the fallen men. We need to move. They'll regroup and come back with more. They gathered the horses and rode hard, pushing through exhaustion. The capital appeared on the horizon as the sun cleared the hills, a sprawl of buildings clustered around a central square. They rode straight to the courthouse, a 2-story brick building with a territorial flag hanging limp in the still air. Cole helped Corinne down. Her legs nearly buckled. He steadied her, his hand firm on her arm. You did good back there. I shot a man. You saved our lives. There's a difference. She nodded, but her hands still shook. They climbed the courthouse steps. Inside, a clerk directed them to Judge Whitmore's chambers. The judge was an older man, lean and sharp-eyed, with silver hair and a no-nonsense expression. He listened to their story in silence, then spread the files on his desk. He read for 10 minutes. His face darkened. Finally, he looked up. This is enough to void the seizure order and open a criminal investigation. Where's Garrett now? Either running or coming after us with more men, Cole said. Then I'll issue a warrant. Whitmore stood. I'll also send a marshal to Black Hollow to secure the land office and arrest anyone involved. He looked at Corinne. Miss Holloway, your land is safe. The seizure order is dismissed as of this moment. Relief hit her so hard she swayed. Cole's hand found hers, squeezing gently. The judge continued. You'll need to testify when this goes to trial. Both of you. But for now, go home. You've done your part. They thanked him and left. Outside, the morning sun was bright and warm. Corinne stood on the courthouse steps, blinking in the light. Cole stood beside her, close, but not touching. We did it, she said quietly. You did it. I just helped. She turned to him. No, we did it together. She took a breath. Cole, what you said last night about fighting for me, did you mean it? Every word. Then I'm telling you now. I want you to stay, not just to help, not just because of the land. I want you to stay because Because I never stopped loving you. The words came out in a rush. I tried. God knows I tried. But the second I saw you standing in my orchard, I knew. You're it for me. You always have been. He stared at her. Then he pulled her close and kissed her, right there on the courthouse steps in front of half the territorial capital. It was the kind of kiss that promised everything. When they broke apart, he was grinning. I'm staying, he said, for as long as you'll have me. Which I'm hoping is forever. Forever sounds about right. They rode back to Black Hollow slowly, stopping to rest the horses and themselves. The world felt different, lighter. Corinne watched the land roll past and thought about futures instead of survival. Cole rode beside her, and every time she looked at him, he was looking back. They reached the orchard at sunset. The trees glowed in the golden light. Corinne slid from her horse and stood looking at them, her chest tight with something too big for words. Cole came up beside her. Welcome home, he said quietly. Home. She turned to him. It didn't feel like home until now. They put the horses away together, working in comfortable silence. Inside the house, Corinne lit lamps while Cole stoked the stove. She made coffee, and they sat at the table, the files still spread where they'd left them days ago. It felt like a lifetime. "What happens now?" Cole asked. "Now we rebuild." She smiled. "The syndicate's done. The land's safe. We've got a harvest coming, and a town to help put back together." "We?" She said more of the spust. "Let's spast around her. Like he mentioning the stray, the word run the stray here. There were this place where lost and Laos white. Then tired. Cone strained in a her. Lao fell might have done. All the crying to placador spose the twitless back. If you want." He reached across the table and took her hand. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." The next week passed in a blur. The marshal arrived and arrested Garrett and 3 others. Daniel surrendered and turned witness, giving testimony that sealed the case. The judge's ruling spread through the territory, and the syndicate's schemes collapsed. Other landowners came forward with their own evidence. By the end of the month, Thorne and his partners were facing federal charges. Black Hollow celebrated. The pastor organized a community dinner in the church. Corinne and Cole walked in together, and the whispers followed them. Most were curious. A few were congratulatory. 1 or 2 were judgmental. Corinne didn't care. She introduced Cole as her partner. Not fiancé. Not yet. They had time to figure that part out. For now, it was enough that he was there, steady and solid beside her, helping her rebuild what had almost been lost. They worked the orchard together, side by side. Cole proved as good with the trees as he was with a rifle. He grafted and pruned, mended fences, repaired the barn roof. At night, they sat on the porch and talked, filling in the 8 years they'd lost. It wasn't always easy. There were hard conversations and old wounds that still ached. But they were healing. One evening, 3 weeks after the showdown at the pass, Cole found Corinne in the orchard. She was checking the late apples, her sleeves rolled up, her hair coming loose from its pins. He watched her for a moment, his chest tight with the simple rightness of it. "Corinne." She turned, smiling. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." He crossed to her. "Everything's right. That's the problem." She laughed. "That doesn't make sense." "I know." He took her hands. "I'm trying to find the words. I've been practicing all day and they still don't sound right." Her smile softened. "Just say it, Cole." "All right." He took a breath. "I love you. I've loved you since I was 20 years old, and I'll love you until I die. I wasted 8 years running from that, and I won't waste another day." He dropped to one knee in the dirt between the trees. "Marry me, Corinne. Marry me, and let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth the second chance you gave me." Her eyes filled. She pulled him up and kissed him, hard and sure. "Yes. Yes, you stubborn fool. I'll marry you." He grinned against her mouth. "That's the second time you've said yes to me. I'm not letting you down this time. You better not." They were married a month later in the Black Hollow church. The whole town came. Corinne wore a new dress, simpler than the one she'd never worn, cream-colored with lace at the collar. Cole wore his Sunday best and looked like he might faint when she walked down the aisle. The pastor kept the service short. When he pronounced them married, Cole kissed her like he'd been waiting his whole life to do it. The congregation cheered. Outside, the autumn sun was bright, and the air smelled like harvest. They rode back to the orchard in the wagon, just the two of them. Corinne leaned against Cole's shoulder, his arm around her, the reins loose in his other hand. The land spread around them, familiar and safe. "Home. Think we can make this work?" she asked. "I know we can." He kissed the top of her head. "We've already survived the worst. Everything else is just living." She smiled. "Just living. I like the sound of that." They reached the house as the sun set, painting the orchard gold and red. Cole helped her down, and they stood together, looking at the trees. The harvest was in. The land was theirs. The future stretched ahead, full of work and seasons and ordinary miracles. Cole turned to her. "Ready? For what?" "For the rest of it. All of it." She took his hand. "I've been ready for 8 years." They walked into the house together, and the door closed behind them. The orchard stood quiet in the twilight, the trees heavy with the promise of next year's fruit. Winter came early that year. The first snow fell in November, dusting the orchard and the distant hills. Corinne stood at the kitchen window, watching the flakes drift down. Cole came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. She leaned back into him, sighing contentedly. "Cold out there," he said. "Good thing we've got plenty of firewood." "Good thing." He kissed her temple. "And good thing I've got you to keep me warm." She turned in his arms, smiling. "You're terrible at romance. You married me anyway." "I did." They stood together, watching the snow. The house was warm, the stove crackling, the coffee pot hissing gently. Outside, the world turned white and quiet. Inside, everything they needed was right here. "Think the orchard will make it through?" Cole asked. "It always does." She rested her head on his shoulder. "We're tougher than we look. Guess we proved that." They had. They'd survived betrayal and gunfire, land grabs and long separations. They'd fought for each other and for the place they loved. And they'd won. "What are you thinking about?" Cole's voice was soft. "The future." She smiled. All the ordinary days ahead. Harvests and winters and springs. Growing old together. Watching the trees grow. Maybe raising a family. His arms tightened around her. "I like the sound of that." "Me too." Outside, the snow kept falling. The orchard disappeared under white, peaceful and still. Inside, Corinne and Cole held each other and watched the world transform. They'd come through fire to get here. They'd earned this quiet, this peace, this love. Spring arrived with a rush of green. The orchard exploded into bloom, white and pink blossoms covering every branch. Corinne walked the rows each morning, checking the buds, planning the season. Cole worked beside her, his hands growing sure with the rhythms of the land. They hired help for the harvest, 2 local boys who needed work. The house filled with the smell of apple pie and cider. The town recovered slowly, but it recovered. New families moved in. The church added a bell tower. The school hired a second teacher. Black Hollow lived. One evening in late summer, Corinne and Cole sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky was gold and orange, the hills purple in the distance. Corinne's hand rested on her stomach. Still flat, but not for long. She hadn't told him yet. She was waiting for the right moment. Cole reached over and took her hand. What are you smiling about? She looked at him. Just thinking about how far we've come. Long way from that first day. When you held a rifle on me, she laughed. You deserved it. Probably. They sat in comfortable silence. A breeze stirred the trees. Somewhere a bird sang. Corinne took a breath. Cole. I have something to tell you. He turned, his expression curious. Yeah? She squeezed his hand. We're going to need a bigger house. It took him a moment. Then his eyes went wide. You mean? She nodded, her smile breaking free. I mean, he pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. His voice came out rough. When? Early spring. Around the time the trees bloom. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes bright. A baby. Our baby. He kissed her, soft and reverent. Then he laughed, the sound full of joy and disbelief. We're having a baby. We are. God, Corinne. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just be here. Like you promised. I'm here. His hand covered hers on her stomach. I'm not going anywhere. Ever. The baby came in April. A girl with dark hair and her mother's eyes. They named her Clara, after Corinne's sister. Cole held her for the first time with shaking hands, his face full of wonder. Corinne watched from the bed, exhausted and happy. She's perfect, he whispered. She is. He looked up, his eyes wet. Thank you. For what? For this. For everything. For giving me another chance. Corinne reached for his hand. We gave each other another chance. He sat beside her, the baby cradled carefully in his arms. Outside, the orchard bloomed white and sweet. Inside, their family began. It wasn't the life they'd planned 8 years ago. It was better. Earned through pain and patience and the slow, hard work of trust. Spring turned to summer. The baby grew. The orchard thrived. Cole and Corinne worked the land together, raising their daughter and building something that would last. One evening, when Clara was 6 months old, Corinne stood in the orchard at dusk. Cole came looking for her and found her beneath the oldest apple tree, the one her father had planted when she was born. She was holding Clara, swaying gently, singing an old song. He stopped and watched them, his heart full. This was the life he'd ridden away from 8 years ago. This was the life he'd come back to find. And by some miracle, it had been waiting. Corinne turned and saw him. She smiled. Come here. He crossed to her and put his arms around them both. Clara made a small sound and grabbed his finger. He looked down at her, then at Corinne. I love you, he said. I know. She kissed him softly. I love you too. They stood together under the tree, the three of them, as the sky darkened and the first stars appeared. The orchard rustled around them, full of life and promise. Home. Finally, completely. Home.